you never know what you can do until you got no choice. And from a personal level, I've got 6 children. My wife, as I said, works for us here at Potters, and I'm thinking, not only is it a 100-year business that we've got to save, if this goes to the wall, I've got a wife and 6 kids, a dog. I think we had 4 cats then.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tricky one. So that the resilience was out of no choice.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, your essential resource for mastering the unique challenges of social media marketing in the hospitality industry authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode we dive deep into the real issues, from evolving guest expectations to standout social campaigns, sharing insights and strategies you can put to work. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, where we're digging into the challenges, successes, and the stories of social media and community professionals in the industry just like you. Subscribe to gain valuable insights that you'll be able to apply to your own work and social presence from each and every episode. Now imagine your entire business turned upside down overnight. This probably isn't very hard for you to imagine. The COVID-19 pandemic hit the hospitality industry like a storm, throwing everything into chaos. Guests and staff suddenly faced unprecedented challenges, and businesses had to pivot, innovate, and find new ways to stay afloat. It was a time of fear, uncertainty, and intense pressure. But here's the truth. While the pandemic was a one-of-a-kind event, it won't be the last time any of us face massive disruptions. Every business at some point will encounter hurdles that demand resilience and creative solutions. So what do you do when your back's against the wall? How do you turn a crisis into an opportunity for growth? Our guest today, Mike Scott, knows exactly how. As the managing director of Potter's Resorts, Mike led his team through the storm with remarkable innovation and determination. Not only did they weather the pandemic, but they also opened their second fully inclusive resort after 102 years, a move that earned them accolades for resilience and innovation. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
So great to have you. Thanks so much. I'd love you to start by just sharing kind of the initial impact that you guys felt after COVID-19 and some of those immediate challenges that you faced.
I guess our I mean, we didn't see the closure coming, and we just kind of thought it would be okay. And then all of a sudden, obviously, as I'm sure you guys got over there, we got the announcement to just shut the doors and send everyone home. And I have to say, the first thing to deal with was the shock. Is that we were just like, okay, what do we do? We have 800 guests that we'd sent home. We got a massive 70-acre resort here on the east coast of the UK, and all of a sudden, it was the basics of how do we lock the doors on this thing? And it was crazy. How do we contact guests when all of a sudden everyone was told to go home? And so, yes, I guess if you say what was the first problem, it was getting your head round just what to do in terms of, should we be shutting water down, or should we be locking the doors to make the place secure? But also we had kitchen here, we serve hundreds of thousands of meals. We had kitchens just full of food, and we're like, well, what do we do with all the food? Because no one's going to be around to eat it. And obviously in those first few days, I mean, obviously none of us had any idea whether it was going to be a week at home or will we, was hospitality ever going to be able to recover from, what we were watching on the television? So, yeah, I think, from a resort perspective, it was just all about kind of shutting it down in a stateful way and making it secure. But obviously customer communication was then key. And because obviously for the financials, we shut everything down. We were cancelling contracts to all of our systems, just trying to, remain financially, obviously viable and afloat. And then we were kind of like, we need to communicate with our community and with people that have got booked, and, and also our team, and communicating with them, because obviously everybody was worried, about their jobs, their health, their family's health, etc. So, yeah, it was a crazy time. I mean, obviously we all lived it, and it doesn't feel like it's like 4.5 years ago. It still feels like it was sort of 6 months ago. But yeah, all good.
Yeah, that's how impactful an event like that is, right? It's going to stick with us for the rest of our lives. But to your point, just so much uncertainty, not only what to do and what's happening, But how long is it gonna last? You have no idea, right? It might have gone away at a week, it might have been a month or 12 months, we didn't know going into it.
Uh,
We had a previous episode with, Tyler Anderson from Casual Fridays, who is a marketing agency working with hotels like yours. So he was
yep.
one of those contracts that was being canceled,
Yeah.
by so many hotels around the world because they had to shut all their doors. And to your point, there were not only those financial considerations, but safety considerations. So
Oh,
walk
yeah.
me through those real quick for a second. What were some of those key strategies that you might have implemented early on to ensure not only the safety, but try and maintain some semblance of satisfaction for guests?
Yeah, I mean, we were very lucky. We are the only family-owned large leisure company left in the UK. So we do have a very loyal customer base, but we also have very long-standing team members with a lot of loyalty, and that ended up really being one of the big reasons for our survival and ultimately the thrive. After all of this, but yeah, I mean, we sent home, we had 600 team members at the time, and as I said, sort of 800 guests. So we sent everyone home because, as far as we were concerned, we all just had to stay away from each other. So we dismantled I always remember it really well. We dismantled the sales office, and we were leaving tables and chairs and computers and marker pens outside. And our sales team, as a team of 60 here in Hopton, were coming up and literally driving up in the car park and picking a chair and a table. I mean, it's mad now I think about it, putting those things in the back of their cars. We all of a sudden, we were very, I wouldn't say very paper driven, but we certainly had a lot of processes that required you to be in the building or be near other people. And both of those things were not really an option. I always said our brand tagline when COVID hit was quality time together, which is possibly
Oh
during a
gosh.
pandemic the worst possible tagline that you could have. So yes, it was very much, we were desperate to keep everyone safe because obviously at that point we didn't even know there was going to be a vaccine. It seemed that
Yeah.
it was random who was obviously being taken ill from it, etc. So we really were almost being, I wouldn't say overly cautious, probably appropriately cautious, but we ended up literally, it was a team here. I actually live near the resort, but we kind of had a team of 5 that looked after the resort and literally were just kind of, patrolling and just making sure that everything was fine. But even they were in different parts of the building. We really were sending everyone as far away from each other. And it wasn't really, I think, until they turned around and said there was a vaccine on the way that kind of we really started to get our heads around, okay, so now we've got to reopen, but how do we reopen when 800 people all eat in the same room as each other?
Mm.
800 people and our team on top of that, 800 people sit in the same bar, in the same theatre, they play sports together. And yeah, I mean, the logistical nightmare of going, how do you perform all of these functions in a business when either there are, legal rules against what you should be doing, but also doing the right thing, which is, looking after your team and looking after your customers. And so, yeah, it was, yeah. Now I look back, I think, we were, I'm sure we'll move on to sort of resilience and stuff. I think it was then that we were kind of like, we got no choice. We giving up isn't an option. It was actually our 100th year. We built on resort a museum room to kind of celebrate 100 years of being around, and it was very much, we can't fail in our 100th year. You know, we've just got to do whatever we got to do, and it was never questioned by the senior team, the owner John Potter and his family, but also our team. It was just like we're gonna do this, guys, whatever. And it did, it did create a culture of whatever comes at us. And for a while, I mean, I'm sure it was the same with you. The rules that were coming out that you could meet people, you couldn't meet people, you could meet people in your postcode or zip code, but only for half an hour. But it was okay if they were a friend of a friend. And I mean, we would sit here every morning and go, right, what are the rules today? And what do we need to do to adapt to remain viable effectively?
It's fascinating because you're talking about now a company that was built and started in 1920, which means it was founded on the east coast of England off the heels of World War One. You survived World War Two, which was brutal over there.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, this pandemic is coming along and threatening to wipe everything out. And I thought it fascinating that your tagline was quality time together. And you said, yeah, that was pretty funny and inappropriate for during a pandemic. But and yet I think that's what allowed you to survive. I think because that focus on quality time together, it sounds to me like that's what allowed you to build this culture and this community around your resort that so many other hotels and hospitality areas, they don't have that because it's transactional, right?
Absolutely.
I'm coming
Yeah.
through town, I pay for a night and I'm on
Yep.
my way. I'm not part of the,
Listen, yeah,
XYZ hotel chain community. I just happened to give them my money one night. Very
absolutely.
different.
We take no bookings through OTAs like your
Mm,
booking.coms and all of the different OTAs. Every single booking we take here at Potters is a direct booking. We do all of our own marketing, we do all of our own thing. We were one resort, we're obviously two. We've got 250,000 Facebook fans, and we have that community and direct relationship with our customers, even to the point, when we closed, we ended up our email system we had to shut down because we were trying to just save every penny.
yeah.
So we set up a MailChimp because it was the cheapest the cheapest system that we could find. And we wrote to all the guests and we said, look, we understand you don't know you've got jobs. You've got the same fears and concerns that we've got. But if you've got a booking and you've paid for your booking, then you can have your money back. We can't expect you to leave it. But if you leave it with us, we promise you, if we can open these doors, we're gonna have some fun, and life will come back. And we actually had 80% of our guests literally go, keep the money.
Wow.
We will, when the time's right, we'll be back. And that was one of the big key factors, and that loyalty from our guests and that community. And actually, as I always did say, I joked about quality time together, is actually we moved that online. We when we closed the doors, we already had a very vibrant social media community, but we also, here in Hopton, we have a team of 60, 80 performers, singers, dancers, comedians. And for their mental health, these guys are at home going stir crazy because, they're used to performing. So within 48 hours of lockdown, we were on StreamYard like you and I are talking on now. These guys wanted to perform. So we started doing daily live streams and just, hi everyone, hope you're all okay, which we then started house parties and quiz shows. We were doing quiz shows where we were joking we couldn't give away any prizes because we weren't allowed to go out and get any. And we then started doing live music sets. It ended up culminating in about a month into lockdown. There is a local called Norfolk Accident Rescue Service. And basically they were at the front line. These guys are clinicians and paramedics, and all of their fundraising stopped because obviously people weren't fundraising. So we ended up doing a 24-hour live stream doing music, comedy for 24 hours straight. And we raised about £20,000, so about $25,000 in 24 hours. And we actually kept them going in petrol and facilities and stuff, and ended up a very close relationship. But actually, it was that switch to our social community, which was always it was vibrant before COVID, but actually you really did feel it wasn't even just about the guests and wanting to entertain and connect with them. It was almost a bringing together of the community in a time where we all just didn't know what was happening, and it wasn't just one thing to worry about, was it? It was your job, your health, your family's health. There were so many unknowns and uncomfortable whatever, and actually to bring it together online was something I will always treasure. COVID was obviously an awful thing and a lot of people lost their lives. I'm not in any way celebrating it, but there was some good that came out of it. There were goods that came out of it. I do believe that, and one of those was we pulled together as a gang, which I don't think look yeah, I don't more than I think we would have if it hadn't have happened. Yeah, I do think that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And let's talk about some of the other things that happened. Because if we fast forward a little bit, you've reopened,
Mhm.
and at some point, you made the decision to go inclusive, which I don't know that too many others, if any other facility in this kind of an environment would have said, you know what, let's pack everybody into the same facility. How did that work? How did that decision come about? And how did that enhance all of your service offerings?
Well, we've always been reasonably inclusive. Basically, before COVID here, you would pay, and obviously you get your accommodation when you came to stay, your entertainment and your activities and your food. What wouldn't be included, there were a few things like obviously alcohol or drinks in general, actually, not even just alcohol, and a few other bits and bobs. Because of COVID, when we reopened, we knew we couldn't use, because I don't know the rules over there, but the rules over here was you had to stay within your family bubble. So we knew we couldn't reopen our restaurants because you are literally, it's like a cruise ship. You are talking one seriously big room. So we were like, we can't open the restaurants, which is a problem when people are coming on holiday. So we ended up looking at our hotel and going, what if we made 50 restaurants by going to 50 hotel rooms, taking all the beds out and all of the normal bedroom paraphernalia, and then putting dining tables in there, and then people could come and stay, and they could then go in those dining suites as a family bubble, and they could dine safely because all of them had patio doors, so we could deliver the food in obviously a COVID safe environment, and they could have their bedrooms to sleep as a family. They would have this area, and then we looked at the car park outside and went, what if we built like a south terrace out there and put loads of furniture and made it really lovely out there? And then we were like, right, that solves it. So we converted 50 hotel bedrooms into 50 restaurant tables, restaurant suites. We then had to build a whole new kitchens, so we converted 4 bedrooms into this huge kitchen and bar. All of this, obviously, I mean, trying to get stuff at that time from any suppliers, or it was just, I look back now and just think, wow. We then said, okay, then, so we then said, right, now we've got a problem, is we've got these 50 rooms, we're all good. How do we entertain them? Because, we know families wanting to come back together, but Potters has always been about entertainment. And we're like, so we've got this big West End Broadway theatre here, massive theatre, but no one can go in it. So how do we do that? So I said, well, why don't we live stream to the bedroom, to the restaurant suites, what's going on in the theatre? And why don't we set up WhatsApp so people in the rooms can then WhatsApp, so our presenters and singers know that they're there and can talk. So we were like, yeah, that seems a good idea. So we then put in big TVs, which again, all different brands, because you couldn't get a supplier to deliver the same. So we were putting these TVs up. We then got the cameras and everything ready. Then we found the problem. I'd agree with a friend of mine who does cabling. I said, I need Ethernet cabling, I need cabling all down to these bedrooms, but the voids were all sealed. So we had no way of getting data cables to any of these rooms. And I was like, you're not going to be able to do this on Wi-Fi, because our Wi-Fi just wasn't, it just was not up to the job. And then one late night on Amazon, I found a system that allowed you to put data over old coax. I don't know if that's a thing of it, like the old style. Well, we had coax because it was the hotel's been there for 25 years. So I thought, I wonder if we could convert that old coax network into a data network. And I bought off Amazon, and it all arrived, and we plugged it all in with face masks and 3 meters apart, and we ended up being able to stream from the theatre with no one in it, which was the weirdest thing ever, watching our theatre company singing to nobody, apart from, of course, there was people, because they were all sitting in their restaurant suites. And then we were like, right, we are ready to open. We were then like, one problem, we haven't got a booking system. And also, how do we tell people what we've done? Because we can't start printing brochures, because so we went back to what I said, the community on social media. We did a live stream. We said, well, let's do a live stream and literally invite, obviously this was as the government here were saying, you can open up on these dates. We went live from the South Terrace outside. We'd built a music festival stage. It was beautiful out. It still is. It's out there now. And we said, we could open up, do a live stream and just walk about and just show them around. And we did. And we had no booking system because the booking system had been cancelled. And we booked about 8,000 people in on a Google sheet, which I love Google Sheets, by the way. But when you've got 20 or 30 sales team working from home collaboratively on one Google sheet, it's an interesting challenge watching all the data moving around and thinking, oh my God, someone cuts and pastes and we're not going to know who's coming tomorrow. But anyway, back to your original question. We then went in the room. We obviously need to give people drinks. We can't continuously have bar service going back and forwards because we're trying to be COVID secure. And therefore, we bought a load of fridges because I remember pushing some of them down the corridor because they were heavy. And in the room, we just filled these fridges. I mean, just filled them with, Cokes and wine and champagne and basically whatever. We just filled these things up. And then overnight, when the guests would obviously be sleeping, we would air the room first, and then we would go in and fill this fridge back up. And the guests were like, we're really liking this. And John Potter, who was the owner, and I was sitting one day, and we said, we know there's a vaccine coming. This was now the vaccine. We know everybody's going to want to go on holiday. They're going to want to get out of their houses. But the hospitality industry has been hit so hard that everyone's going to be trying to claw back losses and, loans they've had to take out. And so everyone else is going to charge more, but they're also going to charge extras. Suddenly you're going to be paying to park. You're going to be paying for, upgrades to this or upgrades to that. And we've always been about, giving the most we can as a family-run business. We run it ourselves, John and the family. We don't rely on, somebody telling us what to do. And we were like, why don't we go the other way? And instead of saying, let's charge you to, sit in the theatre or do this, let's just go completely fully inclusive. You park your car, you leave your wallet, your purse, your money in your car, and you can't spend any money. You walk in and everything's included. You want to go on a rally car, you want to have a gin and tonic, you want to watch a show, you want to eat 4 meals a day, you want a bit of pizza before you go to bed. I don't care what you want, it's included. And, that has differentiated us hugely because every other hospitality company is going in the other direction. And, they are charging, in my opinion, over the top for extras. And the more they do that, the more it celebrates our concept of, these people are our friends. When they come here, they've paid a good amount of money to come. But when they're here, we treat them like friends and we don't want them or expect them to pay for anything.
That's interesting because before we started recording, you and I were talking about how we enjoy Disney. You're headed to the States for Disney World. I had been at Euro Disney late last year, and obviously that's an opposite experience. We love Disney, but you will pay for each and everything down to the air that you're breathing. It feels like very different kind of experience. But what stuns me about what you're talking about, how is that in the middle of the pandemic, you are shut down. There is no income coming into the building at all. And yet you decide, oh, we should invest in revamping the theater and building new restaurant suites and buying TVs and cabling equipment. In a former life, I was a networking guy, so I totally understand that problem there. And then on top of that, somebody in the organization says, you know what we need is an entirely second resort.
Yep,
Talk
that
to me
was
about
that
that.
was John again. John, the owner, he texted me one day, and at that point, you were now allowed to meet somebody outside as long as you stayed 3 meters apart. And we're right on the coast here, literally on the beaches, just to my left here. And we went, and it was a really windy. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. It was a really windy day, and we were staying apart because you had to and you wanted to. It was really windy, and I could hardly hear what he was saying because it was so windy on the cliff. And he just went, I've had a bit of an idea. He said, I'm thinking, the world is going to return to some sort of normal or new normal, as we were all saying at that point. And he went, people are going to want holidays, and we're pretty good at, delivering holidays. And, Hop to Resort is not going to be able to cope with, the amount of people. So I'm thinking, why don't we just go and buy this other resort and convert it? Because this other resort did not have theatres and sports parks and rally kart tracks or anything. It was effectively a golf and spa hotel in Essex. And he said, if we were to buy that and we were to build a Broadway West End theatre and 3 restaurants and open it in 100 days. And I was like, okay. And we said, okay, who's doing what? So John basically lived down there for 100 days and was with his wife Celia they said, right, we'll get the resort ready by hook or by crook. We'll get the resort ready. Your job in Hopton is to make sure we sell it from a standing start, because we're not talking insignificant amounts of money, but we've got to be full from a standing start. We open May the 1st, 2022. That's an immovable date. And therefore we're opening and we need that to be full from the minute it opens. And ultimately we need 40, 50,000 guests a year to go and visit there. And if we're ever quiet, that's going to cause a problem, because Hopton before COVID had an occupancy of 99.5%. We are not your average hotel that relies on your booking engines that have, we are full 24/7, 365. And that is the ethos here. One empty room is seen as not failure, but, not good enough. And that culture, means we are driving. So I basically was in Hopton thinking, okay, so John's down there with the builders, and getting builders at that time was an interesting challenge. Getting builders who could get any material to build anything was even more of an interesting challenge. But John said, right, I'm going to build it. You need to get selling it. The problem, of course, is what am I selling? Because for 100 days, I'm selling a building site, because it literally was a building site while they were building all the facilities. And I'm like, okay, so we've got to sell this thing out. And I've got faith. I knew we'd get it done. I wasn't quite so sure 24 hours before we opened, but right up to that point, I was sure we would get it done. And literally the night before we opened, all of us were down there with our home vacuum cleaners and it was crazy times, but funny. I thought, and John and I chatted and said, okay, we obviously haven't got a brochure because it's not even ready, but also we were living on the pennies, we really were, every penny. And we came up with an idea and said, well, we want to talk to our community, but why don't we, instead of trying to say, oh, hang in there and we'll show you when it's pretty, which is going to be the day we open, why don't we take them on the journey? So we created what we called the Insiders, and we went out to our community and said, look, we're going to get videos every night. John is there. He's going to show you what we're doing. You're going to see the building site. You're going to see the challenges. You're going to see us try and build this thing in 100 days. And, you can be actively in the story to then want to come. So we set up a list and said, join the Insiders. We had 60,000 people join that list within 2 days. And we were literally emailing. And I now look back on some of the videos. I mean, John would be walking around at 3-4 in the morning with a flashlight going, I think that wall's going, but I'm not sure. And we've lost the speakers. And I always remember we bought a shuffleboard, which I think is more of an American thing than it is here. Is the stones went missing, and John was doing this video going, if anyone sees the stones for our shuffleboard, please do text us and let us know. But so we took the Insiders on the journey with us, and then maybe 50 days before we opened, we went out and said, you're part of the story, but we need you to come and, see what you think. And we value your opinions and feedback. And it's not going to be perfect day one, and it wasn't, but you've seen what we're trying to do here. And we opened on May the 1st, and we have been full for 2.5 years since opening. We have never yet had a break where we haven't been full. And we ended up actually getting these little badges made, these little Insider badges. And when anyone came who was one of the Insider community, they actually got a little badge from us as a thank you and an appreciation for that support. Because, we do not take that lightly, that people care enough to want to, follow your story, but also, spend their hard-earned money coming out of a pandemic on coming and having some fun with us. So, good times.
What a great story. And I got to tell you, my CEO is known for, coming to me, coming to others in the company with new ideas that we had to just basically drop everything. And this is what we're going to do now. But never will I feel like, oh, that's too much in comparison to your story. Because he's never come to me and said, we're going to open a brand new hotel in 100 days and it's got to be full. Nothing in comparison to that. Folks, we're talking with Mike Scott about how Potter's Resorts overcame so many challenges posed by the pandemic. And we've got a bunch more points to cover. But first, let me share with you a quick word from Alex Kahn.
My name is Alex Kahn, and I'm from Germany. I'm working as a social media strategist, and I'm running a social media agency. I have a lot of clients, so it's hard to log in and log out and be an admin and all those pages, and Agorapulse helps me to streamline the process. I can give employees of mine access to certain pages. I can also see what they're doing. They save a lot of time by responding quickly on those different profiles. So basically it saves me time and money by having a proven system, a software. I test it thoroughly and it works for me. One big difference for me is Agorapulse is the only tool I found where I can also see the comments of dark posts of Facebook ads I'm running. Besides that, I love also that Agorapulse has an app which is easy to use. And the whole price model is, in my eyes, very fair.
So, Mike, we've touched on technology a little bit, but I'd love if you could explain a little bit more the role that technology and creative thinking played in overcoming all these obstacles that you faced.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've touched on a few within the business in terms of, some of the technology we were trying. I guess what it also did, the pandemic, is we had paper processes like, many businesses do. We also had a lot of static data, static Excel documents. Everything was here in Hopton. We had, file servers with all of our documents on, and suddenly our sales team are all at home and they can't access it. So, it was very much a out of no choice, really. We went cloud a lot. Even our phone system was a very old school system. So we obviously had to move to IP phones. And yeah, it really did force a bit of a technical revolution, but again, out of necessity. Again, it wasn't necessarily strategic. It was, okay, how do we communicate? How do we get the team to communicate? Slack, bang, just got rolled out, which is, again, it's still being used today and is a critical part of the business. I said to you earlier, Google Docs and Sheets became, absolutely key, and that collaboration, Zooms, and Agorapulse, was a key thing we were using for engaging with our community, but also sharing the load, because suddenly that became a lot more intense. And my wife's actually our social media manager, but we also have some other people, and we were all dipping in, and it just kind of forced us to think outside the box in terms of what new ways can we work. And I said there wasn't, there was a lot of bad came out of the pandemic. But, one of the good things is it definitely broke us from thinking, this is what we do. We're one resort, we deliver this. And, I'm not saying we weren't ever innovative then, but nothing like now in terms of just, we are always now going, what's the next step up, the next thing coming, I mean, the amount of talk of AI, as I'm sure in your business, what's that going to do next for us, in a good way and probably in a bad way. But we have learned that whatever comes our way, it'll be fine, because it will be. And I do think that is a real cultural improvement in the business.
That's a huge shift. Absolutely. You mentioned earlier, we talked about resilience. You talked about actually winning some awards. Can you talk about some of the key factors that you think might have contributed to Potter's Resorts receiving actual business awards for resilience and innovation?
Yeah, it's weird, really, because I always look at them as, proud of, we won numerous awards for, as you say, resilience, innovation, for marketing. The new resorts won New Business of the Year last year. But to me, they are all outcomes in terms of what is key is what we're delivering is a great product, and we're much more open now to constantly self-evaluating that. And therefore, those awards are they're fantastic. They're great, and they're good for marketing, and they're good for team morale. But in reality, the resilience and innovation, I almost wanted I wouldn't say I felt fraud on it, but when you got no choice, you do whatever you got to do. And that was a personal learning out of all of this, is you never know what you can do until you got no choice. And, from a personal level, I've got 6 children. My wife, as I said, works for us here at Potters. And I'm thinking, not only is it a 100-year business that we've got to save, you know, if this goes to the wall, I've got, a wife and 6 kids, a dog. I think we had 4 cats then.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tricky one. So, that the resilience was out of no choice. The innovation was the fun bit, because actually it ended up, I wouldn't say it was ever fun actually, but I enjoyed feeling that suddenly we could do so much more, purely because we took the blinkers off. Because before COVID, we were business as usual. We just kind of, we did the same thing. And actually, when you can't do the same thing, it does just broaden your horizons hugely.
That is an amazing testament to human resilience. So thank you for sharing that. My last question, because you
Mhm.
talked about the community and how that honestly it exists online on social media. So I'm curious, how are you measuring the business impact? It's one thing to know, oh, we've got so many followers
Yep.
and we're seeing engagement, but how are you tying that to these business metrics? I love how much you stressed. We have a 99.9% booking rate, right? And that's not negotiable. I love that drive. How are you connecting those two?
Well, it's weird, really, because I always look at what I would, those top of funnel metrics, as you say, fans and clicks and likes and etc. And I always think when people say it's a vanity, I'm like, to me, that's just, I actually disagree with that, because we track all of those metrics, and I'm a bit of a metric geek in terms of, I do look for, we look for trends and how we do that. But the one thing we do, which again was a COVID thing, is we now justify and track every single penny. And we moved very much from, we used to do some brand marketing, and we used to, because we were like, oh, it's fine, we'll go and spend £10,000 on a billboard or a taxi. We had in London, we had a taxi covered in our brand. And we very much moved towards now we need to be proving ROI. We need to be tracking, those top of funnel metrics, but actually the middle of funnel stuff, our guided tours, brochure requests and clicks. And we need that to flow right the way through to bookings and conversions, etc. So, everything we do is which makes me sound a bit machine like, is we track it to the penny. So, when people sometimes, and if you were to go on our social media, we get 100 million odd interactions a year. Some of the content we put out, I think you'd probably laugh, but the reality is, we're very much Pareto. 80% of our content is just us enjoying ourselves and showing the guests how much fun you can have if you come and stay with us at either resort. But in reality, we need to sell beds and we need people to come and stay. And therefore, we track every single metric. But the one metric we track, which I don't believe anybody else tracks until they message you and say they do, is customer happiness. We don't track. I hate NPS. I don't like customer satisfaction, because in the world we live in now, if your goal is to satisfy your customers, that's a problem, frankly,
Yeah.
because we track happiness. So we measure happiness. So John and I created a customer happiness score, and at the end of everybody's break, we put a little card on their breakfast placemat with a pen saying, keep the pen, and just tick one of these 5 faces, obviously happy to unhappy, and give us a little note of why. And we get about 80% of the guests fill them in. So a really good cohort to trust. And then we've created a little formula that gives a score from 0 to 100. So if every single guest ticks the happiest face, it's 100. If everyone ticks the unhappiest face, it's 0, which obviously doesn't happen. And their comments, and within a couple of hours of that break finishing, every single team member has a copy of that. They know the score for the previous break, and they know all the comments, which obviously give you that, the qualitative data of why those scores. And happiness score is, for this year so far, 96.5. And that is an internal score. That's, we don't benchmark against anyone else. And our view is, if we're fighting to get to 100, which is the ethos here, if every single one of our customers is actively happy, the word of mouth, the repeat business, the referral business, you can't fail. You can't fail. And therefore, of all the metrics and all the CPAs and CPCs and all of that great stuff, the one metric that we genuinely believe is customer happiness. And if you're measuring happiness and your goal as a team is, let's make all the customers happy, actively happy, we call it. In other words, they're going to do something about their happiness. They're going to leave us an online review, or they're going to tell everyone in their office, you've got to go to Potts for a weekend. It was just amazing. And therefore, we have so much repeat business, and so many of our guests refer their friends, family, and loved ones in here. So in terms of metrics, the rest fascinate me, but happiness is the one we're obsessed with.
Absolutely brilliant. So brilliant. I love that ethos. Mike, this has been absolutely fantastic. Loved the stories, the conversation, the passion that you guys have for success. For those who want to learn more, who want to book a weekend, whether they're in the US or the UK or someplace else,
Yep.
Tell them where to go to find you.
Obviously, we're there on the web, so it's www.pottersresorts.com, or pop over to Facebook and join our community, either our group or our Facebook page, and obviously mention Mike and the podcast, whatever. And I shall make sure I ask my wife, who is very active on Agora Pulse, keeping an eye on comments. I will make sure that she passes it on. So yeah, it's been really good, Mike. I really appreciate the chat.
Terrific. Thank you so much. That's all we've got for today, friends. Don't forget to find the Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition on Apple and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by Agora Pulse, the #1 rated social media management solution. Discover more at agorapulse.com. Enjoyed the episode? Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Your feedback drives our content.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.